My name is Ashlyn, and welcome back to Medicated and Motivated, the podcast. This is episode 3, and I'm going into this episode with no script, which is probably quite dangerous, but I have been thinking about this topic for a good 3 or 4 days now. Today, we're going to be discussing the leeches of EMS and how to cope with them. Okay, so before I get started, I have to introduce you guys my newest little friend that is going to be joining me in my office. No, I'm not talking about Shadow. I did not get Shadow a sibling. I physically can't. My landlord only allows one pet. I am talking about this little guy. And if you're not watching this on YouTube, I'm very sorry. I will post a picture of him on my Instagram. But this little rubber ducky is the cutest. Look at his little uniform. Look at his radio. Look at his little bag. He even has a little badge. Oh my gosh, it's not focusing. There you go. Look how cute he is. My mom makes it her mission to find the cringiest, cutest, and most stereotypical EMS things, and then she'll buy them for me. This is my favorite one she's ever bought me. I'm obsessed with him. He is going to sit right here next to my Polaroid camera. I love him so much. Okay, let's get into this. Like I said, I don't have a script for this episode, which is probably pretty dangerous because I have a lot of thoughts. I am a very scatterbrained person, but I've thought about this topic a lot. I have a very toxic history in EMS when it comes to coworkers or just people that have drained me in this career. And the other day I was talking to my best friend about like the month I've had and the partner I've had who was literally sucking the life out of me in every single shift that I was going in. And as I'm sitting there ranting to her, I'm like, this would be a great topic to talk about on my podcast because like I said, I talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of EMS. That is the whole vision I want for my podcast because it's what I do over on my TikTok as well. I show the real and raw lifestyle of being an EMS provider, even the bad things. This is one of those bad things. This is one of those ugly things. There are so many leeches in this career. It's not okay. It needs fixed. Now, I have 3 leeches that are on my mind, and I'm going to tell little stories about each of them and how I kind of coped with them. I will be 100% honest with you. I left 2 jobs in EMS. I've talked about this several times on my TikTok page, but if you did not know, I have worked for 4 services. I currently work full-time at one of them, part-time at another one. The other 2, I left because the work environments were so toxic, and most of the time it's because of the coworkers. It was because the environment that they were creating was so draining, it was toxic, it was always negative, and that is not a work environment that somebody should be in. Leeches not only suck the blood out of you, they just suck the life out of you. And when I started noticing, especially at my second job, which is when I became a brand new paramedic, I was starting to absolutely hate going to calls. I started hating going into shifts, and it made me question why I wanted to be in EMS in the first place, which is not okay. That was a very alarming thing, and that's what prompted me to sit back and realize, okay, when did I start feeling this? Why did I start feeling this? And how can I fix this? And the only answer that was fathomable and most appropriate was leaving the job. I'm not saying that every single solution to an EMS leech is going to be leaving them, like leaving the job, but I will say it worked for me in 2 different scenarios. It's not going to be the answer for everyone, though. So grab a drink. Mine today is a little baby Alani, and let's get started. So the first EMS leech that I ever encountered in this job was my FTO, would then become my coworker at my very first EMS job. I was a baby EMT going through paramedic school, and this guy was a young guy. Like, I was 19 at the time. Yeah, I was 19 turning 20. He was only around like 26. Not that big of an age gap. But this guy, as EMS 2020 would say, was a 4-year paramedic. And if you don't know what that stereotype is, it's basically where 4 years into being a paramedic or 4 years just being in the job, you start cutting shortcuts and cutting corners. You build these bad habits. You're not like fully into the job anymore. You start like being burnt out. All of this, it's not good. The 4-year paramedic is not a good label, and this guy definitely had that. He was one of those guys that nobody really liked being around because he had such a bad attitude. He was not very social, And the scariest part about this guy is he had such a good mask. Like, he was one person to coworkers and staff. He was a completely different, I'm talking, I hate using this because it is an actual like medical disease, like a mental health disorder, but he was so almost bipolar. One person to staff and coworkers, completely different, unrecognizable person to patients. And I'm glad he treated patients well, but it was almost like a, if this is how you can meet a patient, why don't you be like this all the time type of thing. So when I first started this career, when I first started the job, he was my quote unquote FTO. The service didn't really have like established FTOs. I was just stuck with him during my orientation. And let's just say I was taught literally nothing. He fully expected me to just know everything. This caused several problems. And when I say several problems, I mean my very first high priority call. I will never forget this. If I can figure out how to put pictures and stuff like next to me, I will, because I will put the picture of me right here of my reaction after this call. And it was not because the call was bad. The call ended up going fine. It was the way this guy sucked the life out of me, completely beat me to the ground after the call. Moral of the story is I couldn't find a supply. I was maybe on like my second or third orientation shift. We needed a supply during the call and I could not find it. I ended up being like, hey, can you remind me where this is? And obviously that was not okay. Like, I should have memorized that truck forward and backward by my second orientation shift. Anyway, this dude beat me to the ground after the shift. This is like 2 a.m, by the way. And I start bawling after everyone else went back to bed. And it made such a negative impact on me that afterwards, I literally stayed up. Like I said, 2 a.m. I stayed up until like probably 4 or 5 a.m. going through that truck. And I memorized it. It's one of those examples of I became a better provider because of it, but I should not have had to go through that to become a better provider. So yeah, I knew the truck forwards and backwards out of fear of getting yelled at again. Sucked the life out of me. That was, like I said, second orientation shift. I was here for 1.5 years. Let's continue. So I ended up going through. Don't worry, I ended up getting a proper orientation just way too late. So we're going to flash forward to about almost a year of me being at this service. I ended up being partners with him. He's no longer my FTO. He's my actual partner. And this would start like 6 months of misery. We were stuck at the same station, partners with each other. I'm pretty sure it's because we were short-staffed and like this was a single truck station, which basically means there's only one truck at the station, and it had to be staffed. The other station had 2 trucks. They could kind of get away with it, but this station only had 1 truck, so it had to be fully staffed no matter what. So they always threw us 2 at this station. 6 months. It was the longest 6 months of my life because remember how I said this guy was one person to coworkers, one person to patients? Let me just describe to you a typical shift for me. Okay, we worked the 48-96, which means we were on for 48, we were off for 96, Saturdays and Sundays. So I would arrive Saturday morning, 8 a.m. That's when our shift started. And he would show up. He would go straight to his room. He would set up his bed. He would set up his TV. And he would be in his room. Door was shut and everything. He like glanced at the truck sometimes, most of the time, not really. Because he also had the mantra in his head of the EMT's responsibility is the truck. I don't have words for that one. But I would go out there. I would check my truck all by myself. Every single cabinet. If I would wash the truck by myself as well. Make sure we had gas. Basically just make sure it was stocked and ready to go for a call, right? All by myself. He would stay in his room. The only time I would ever see this guy come out of his room for the whole 48-hour shift is if we had a call, if he wanted food, or to go to the bathroom. That is it. Did not say a single word to me unless he had to. When we were on calls, I tried my absolute darndest to do anything he needed without even being asked because I didn't want yelled at, or I would just like try to stay out of the way. Because this guy, I don't know if he just didn't trust me enough or whatever. If we were on a call, we'd get the patient in the back of the truck and he'd say, okay, I'm ready to go. I didn't even put the blood pressure cuff on the patient. He would do it all himself. He did not want any help. I don't know if that's because it was from me or if he's like that with other people, but that's just the attitude he had. And granted, we did have a pretty decent transport time. Like, you can easily do all that stuff en route, but like, what if the patient's critical and you don't know it until you get those vital signs? Like, it was ridiculous is what I'm trying to say. This guy went out of his way, and ultimately, when you think about it, hindered patient care and not getting that first set of vitals, like not staying and playing on scene for a little bit, because that little interaction between him and I was more important. Leeches. And the fact that I was trying so hard to stay out of his way, do everything he possibly needed. Like, if we did have to stay and play, I tried my absolute darndest to get those vitals as soon as possible, every single vital sign that he would need, get that glucometer out so he's ready for a blood sugar, get the 12 lead cables out, get them on the patient, print off that 12 lead. Like, I was working so meticulously to avoid getting yelled at or avoid just that face of disapproval from him. I was doing my job, and I got real good at my job out of fear. And that is not how anyone should be looking. So, like I said, this went on for 6 months. I could tell so many specific stories of how many times I cried to my other coworker, Lindsay, because I was so miserable being partners with this guy. Ultimately, I ended up putting in my 2 weeks at this place, and then literally 2 days later, he ended up putting his 2 weeks in. So it was just like let's just say people cheered when he put in his 2 weeks. Rumor has it he's actually back at this service, so I don't know. But how did I cope with this guy? Probably not in the healthiest of ways, okay? Like I said, I was trying my darndest to be the textbook perfect EMT for this guy, doing everything he possibly would have needed, trying to basically predict what he needed or what his moves were before he was even needing them or doing them. And yeah, that's a great EMT, but the unhealthy way I coped with it was because I knew it was out of fear. I knew that I was trying to avoid getting yelled at. And number one, that's just not a good partnership in general. A good partnership should be like we are able to talk to each other. I should know his moves because I want to help him. I know what he needs, not out of fear. So all I basically did was I worked harder. That's how I coped with this. I worked harder at being a better EMT, trying to get all my skills down, trying to make sure I knew that truck forwards and backwards, and just doing the best I could to be helpful. Did it matter? No, he didn't appreciate it. Like I said, most of the time I was doing it just like to avoid. It felt like a parent yelling at a kid. And I am that kid trying not to get yelled at by their parent. That's how it felt. It was awful. Did not cope with it in the healthiest of ways, but this was my first experience with a leech. So how am I supposed to know? All right. That was baby Ashlyn, baby EMT Ashlyn. Got my paramedic license. I ended up leaving this place. There's going to be an episode eventually where I talk about the red flags of agencies and like red flags of choosing an EMS job. This job will come up a lot. We'll talk about it later. Ended up leaving this job when I got my paramedic license. So now we are going to flash forward to the second service I ever worked at and the second leech, actually like second multiple leeches that I dealt with and how I coped with them. So by now I've been in the job. This is almost 2 years. I started in 2019. This is now 2021 when I started at my new job as a brand new paramedic. Had my paramedic license like 2 weeks when I started at this job. Actually, I didn't even have my physical state license when I started this job. I just had my national because Kansas, if you live in Kansas, you know, they take forever getting their paramedic licenses. We literally had to call and request it. It was taking so long. It was ridiculous. All right. So the first leeches I deal with, and this is going to tangent just a little bit because it does follow through for the rest of the episode. I'm sorry. And I want to put a disclaimer out there. I mean no respect when I say this. But most of the leeches you're going to deal with in this career are the veterans of the career. The people that have been doing this since the ambulances were hearses still. Nice little picture right here if I can ever figure out how to do it. Sometimes there's like a 50-50 shot that the veterans of this career are going to be the most pleasant people you ever talk to. You're going to learn so much from them. You're going to hear the coolest and most interesting stories from this career from these guys. Fantastic. Love that. I do have some of those at my job that I adore working with, and I will pick up just to be with them. And then you have the other 50%. The ones that are so burnt out, have been doing this job for so freaking long that they're basically just showing up because they know they have to. They hate going on calls. They hate taking patients. They hate writing reports. And they are so bored and not bothered by like priority 1 traumas, cardiac arrests, like serious calls. To them, it's just another annoying call that they have to go on, and they're tired of it because they just want to sit at the station all day. Those are the leeches I'm about to talk about. And again, no disrespect. Just because I'm going to talk about, we're going to say 4 of these guys, does not mean that every single veteran in EMS is a bad guy or a bad woman. It's just the saltiness that drives me insane. And it's also a generational thing. A lot of the backlash that I'm going to talk about from veterans of this career, they're also like, old enough to be my grandpa. And I'm a young pup, obviously. I'm enthusiastic about being at my job. I like running calls. I will hop calls just because I like going on them. And people get annoyed. And especially the older guys that don't want to do anything anymore. They can't move as fast. They don't want to move as fast. They're not as enthusiastic as me. It's a big generational thing as well. Could talk about that in a separate episode as well. Back to the topic of discussion. The second round of leeches that I dealt with, the service that I started at when I was a paramedic, the second service, was a very old service. Like, these guys have been with this service since the day it started. Like, the day it became an EMS agency, they were there. They still had radio numbers. They still had just all of the traditional EMS things that they used in like the 90s and early thousands, okay? I'm not saying all of this is a bad thing. But when I come in and I have experience under my belt, I've worked at a service before this. I just graduated paramedic school. I've picked up on a lot of new things that I may not have had at my other job. So I walk in, and even just the lingo over the radio, I'm getting penalized for because it's not the traditional lingo. I'm being told that the way I talk over the radio is not the way we do it around here. I'm sorry, I'm not talking the way that you did over the radio in the 1990s. Clear speech is the best way to go. I'm not going to memorize the whole list of 10 codes that you're about to give me. No, sir. That's just a minor thing. So, I will give an example of this guy. I know a lot of EMS services are not like this. I've come to terms with that because a lot of people in my comments are actually like this. I didn't know this was a thing. Some services, EMTs cannot take patients. Like, if it's an EMT medic truck, the medic takes all the patients. That's a topic for a different time too. But I went on a call one time, and it was little Mima fell 3 days ago. She hurt her knee, and her knee looks like a softball. She's not complaining of pain necessarily, but she can't drive herself to the hospital, so she calls 911 because she knows that we will take her to the hospital. Perfect. Fantastic. I'm glad to take Mima to the hospital. She's sweet. She's just needing a ride. That's all. All right. So I look at my EMT partner, and like I said, been here forever. This is probably like my second week at this job. I look at him, I said, okay, are you ready to go? And he's like, yeah, I'll start driving. And I'm like, no. Like, are you ready to take this patient? Like, are you comfortable taking this patient? Because I was planning on handing her to you. He looks at me and he says, oh, I don't do that. And I look at him, I was like, oh, you mean like you're not comfortable taking her? Or like, what's the deal? Because I'm more than happy to give her to you. Like, I'm not going to do anything to her. She does not need any ALS interventions. Her vital signs look great. It's a 20-minute ride to the hospital. I'm more than comfortable giving her to you. Oh, no, I don't do that. I just drive. And then he pulls she's going to need pain management. You're a paramedic. You need to take this patient. Needless to say, whenever I was partners with this guy, I took every single patient. Even if it was a literal stubbed toe, I took the patient. And again, I don't know if it's a generational thing. I don't know if it's just me being like, dude, I am 5 reports down. Can you please take the load off of me and take this stubbed toe? But it was very frustrating. And it was a very big, this is the way we've always done it mentality. And that is another thing that does follow a lot of EMS veterans. And it sucks the life out of me because, like I said, if I'm 4 reports down, we've been running nonstop for a couple hours, can you at least take the load off me a little bit? A stubbed toe does not need 100 mics of fentanyl. Just saying. So little stuff like that always just sucked the life out of me. I knew if I was partners with certain people at this job, I was going to have to take every single patient because that's the way we've always done it. Very frustrating. Second leech at this job. Now, this leech, I actually have a very, very, very long history with, dating back to paramedic school. This leech worked at a service that I used to do my clinicals at, and allegedly she left this job, got hired on at the service that I was working for as a paramedic. And I don't know what I ever did to this woman. She did not like me. She still doesn't like me to this day. She has openly talked about me. She has openly spoke very bad about me. And I can't say all this without saying alleged because I do have proof of it. And I sit here and I ponder sometimes when I have spare time, which I don't, of what I did to this woman. I seriously don't know. I really don't. I cannot pinpoint a single, situation, event, words that I have said to start this just hatred she has for me. All right. So she starts working at this service. And I did my best to avoid being partners with her. As a new paramedic, I was already scared being at this service. But then having a partner that I know doesn't like me, that I know does not agree with some of my patient care and the interventions that I do, she was a very, well, this is not the way we do it type thing. That's not the way we do it. That's not correct. She's not a, hey, I saw you did this. Can you explain to me why you did it this way instead of this way? She's a, that's not right. You needed to do it this way type of person. And mind you, this woman was an EMT at the time. She was in medic school. I will give her that. She was an EMT at the time. Yeah. The specific call that really spawned her being called just a leech for me, I will talk more in depth. I plan on actually asking Mike to be on the podcast when I talk about this call. It is a very pivotal call for my EMS career. It's actually the call that led me to meeting Mike and reaching out to him. If you don't know who I'm talking about Mike Carencio. He is the host of the World's Okayest Medic podcast. It is the podcast that I went to and that I sought for after this call. And let's just say this call, you're going to want to listen to this episode. It is my most proud call to this day as a paramedic. I am unbelievably proud of myself. But at first I was not. It was a very traumatic call for me. Not like patient care wise. Everything that happened afterwards because of this woman. The leech. All right. So basically, this woman talked openly about my patient care, specific patient care. So not only is she kind of like breaking HIPAA-ish, but she's talking about calls to other people that were not involved in the call. Which in some cases, yeah, that's fine. But in the way she was doing it, no, it was not fine. She was talking to another paramedic about my patient care during this call. This paramedic is a veteran of the career. Like, when I say actually, like, he was probably around when the hearses were ambulances, I mean it literally. Like, this dude's been doing it a really long time. So, she is openly talking about my patient care to this paramedic. One of the patient care, the main thing that she harps on during her time talking about this call is the fact that I gave ketamine to a patient. I gave it to sedate and for pain control. All right. The correct use of ketamine. So about 2 weeks after this call, I actually ended up having to meet up with this paramedic to do a exchange of supplies. He was meeting me to give me supplies after a call. And he starts asking me, hey, heard you had that call 2 weeks ago. Like, how'd it go? So I start telling him like very vague details about this call. Like it was a very traumatic injury, like all this stuff, yada, yada. Because at this point, everyone in the service had heard about it. It was a pretty big call. And then the only way I can describe this is a parent screaming to their child about a bad grade on a test. Or whenever an athlete screws up in a game and that coach is just berating them. That's the only way I can describe it. This paramedic starts screaming at me, like legit screaming at me about how I'm going to get the service sued because I used the medication incorrectly. I gave the wrong dose. I don't know anything because I'm a new paramedic, and he's been doing this for years upon years. He knows a lot of things about ketamine, and I should be attending his medication classes because I'm so young. I have so much more to learn. This man does have medication classes. I will give him that. But it was just the way he was saying it. The way he's saying, I'm so young. I don't know anything. He's been doing this a long time. He knows everything. He teaches these classes. And it was the I'm going to get the service sued because I killed somebody type of comment that really got to me. So I'm sitting there flabbergasted. Absolutely flabbergasted. Like, did this man really just speak to me that way? My partner, who is one of my friends actually, she's just sitting there absolutely flabbergasted as well. She's like, what the heck is going on? All right. So we pull away. And when I finally come to terms with what just happened to me, I immediately start calling my boss. I'm like, this just happened. I will not be spoken to this way. And I expect something to be done. Like the way he spoke to me is not a way a coworker should be talking to another coworker, nor should he have known all of the details of the call that he was not involved in. And he's like, you're right. He should not have spoke to you that way. However, that sounds like so-and-so. So not only is he saying, oh yeah, that's not right. Like, I'm so sorry that happened, but that sounds like him. So that means this man knows that this guy has a history of, talking to people like trash, and you're just letting it happen. Like nothing's changing. All right, that's fine. He asked me to write an incident report about the problem, and I said, okay, I'll do that. Send it to him. And let's just say nothing was done. Nothing was done at all. So much so that my friend, the same friend that was sitting with me in the truck as I'm getting yelled at, she actually goes to one of his med classes. Like, I want to say this is about a week later after this incident. She texted me while she was at the class, and she's like, hey, they're talking about you. And I was like, oh, I'm so shocked. What are they saying? And shocker, they were talking about ketamine during the med class. This man goes to say, and I just wish Ashlyn was here, because then goes on to say the details of the call that he was not on and how I was using ketamine incorrectly. So not only is he now talking about me, my call, and what I did wrong, while I'm not there to defend myself, he is talking about me to the entire service bad, making me look like I'm such an incompetent paramedic. And again, I'm not saying all this allegedly because I do have proof that all of this happened. But just the way that he is talking to all the other people at our service about a fellow paramedic, instead of maybe lifting me up, maybe giving me advice, he's berating me, making me look like an incompetent paramedic. Sucked the ever-living life out of me. This was the call that actually made me put in my 2 weeks at this service. About a week after I was yelled at by this paramedic, I put in my 2 weeks. And it's so horrible because I actually really enjoyed this service. I loved the area. I liked being rural. I knew the fire department so well. I still speak very highly of the fire departments in this service. I loved the police officers. And I just enjoyed my time at this service. I got to challenge myself as a paramedic, as a normal paramedic, and then just like as a new paramedic in general, because being a rural EMS is not for the weak. And I got to challenge my skills and critical thinking every single call. But putting in my 2 weeks at the service was the healthiest thing I could have done. And this is the part where I said at the beginning of the episode, not every single coping mechanism for leeches of your career is going to be leaving the job. But in a situation like this where I was constantly being harassed, talked about horribly by other paramedics to the point where they're calling me incompetent, and my skills as a paramedic, my ability to be a paramedic was being in question. That's not okay. I left the job. There were several other leeches at this job, but those were the main two that I was just like, wow, okay. So let's go back to the female, all right? She was partners with me on that call. I was only partners with her twice in my entire year at this job, but that did not stop her. So we're going to flash forward about a year after this incident. I am at my current service. I still work for this service, much happier at this service. And my coworkers were sitting at the hospital. They had just finished a call. And this woman pulls up to the same hospital and she drops off a patient. And she recognizes one of them because she's in the paramedic class with them. Walks up to them like they are best friends. And they're like, oh, how's that medic that we kicked out of our service? They're talking about me. And these two coworkers, they don't know who she's talking about. They don't know that I came from that service. And the coworker that she's directly talking to, the one that's in her paramedic class as well, he's like, oh, like, I don't really know who you're talking about. And she just openly name drops me. Oh, it's Ashlyn. And both of them, thank God, both of these coworkers enjoyed me. They liked me as a coworker. I've worked with them several times and I still enjoy working with them. They're like, oh, Ashlyn, yeah, she's doing good here. Like, we enjoy working with her. Like, they're trying to, speak positively about me, which I still thank them to this day about. And I don't remember exactly how they worded it. I would have to pull up the second incident report that I've now written about this woman to remember exactly how she quoted it. But she said something along the lines of, well, I'm glad she's being a competent medic here, unlike she was at our service. Something along the lines of that. Here's what really ticked me off. I don't work for that service anymore. Completely quit, didn't even stay PRN at this service. She is now coming to my current coworkers talking openly about how I'm so incompetent. What if these coworkers didn't know me? What if these coworkers didn't like me? What if they're like, oh my gosh, she got kicked out of a service because she was being incompetent? And what if they would have took that information and went to my boss? Now she is threatening my job at another place. The audacity of this woman. So I did two things after this. Number one, both my coworkers, again, thank God they like me. Thank God they're friends with me. They came up to me and they're like, hey, this woman came up to us. And I was like, holy cannoli. Holy cannoli. Thank God her classmate, the coworker that she talked to, like all buddy to, was just like, yeah, no, she's not a good person. Thank God they came up to me though. They told me exactly what happened. I immediately called my old boss at my service, the one that she still works at, the one that I quit. I have nothing bad to say about this boss. I want to make that very abundantly clear. He's a very, very nice man. He's a very good businessman. But the only thing I have to say about him is, dude, you need to control your employees a little bit more, because that is why people are leaving, and that's why this service has such a bad reputation. So I call him and I'm like, hey, this woman, the reason I left your service, is now threatening my current job, talking to my coworkers, telling them how incompetent I am. And he was very apologetic. He said, I am so sorry that happened to you. That is not okay. Please write me an incident report. Send it to me over an email. So now the second incident report that I've written about this woman. A leech. A true freaking leech. Threatening my job while I was working with her, and when I'm not even at her service anymore. She's still just sucking the life out of me. All right, enough of her, because every single time that she pops up in my brain, I can feel the blood boiling in me. The main way that I handled her was I did exactly what you're taught to do when you start at a service. Go to your command staff. Go to your supervisors, because it's not okay. Should I have confronted her? Probably. Would it have done anything? Absolutely not. She was one of those people that she'll deny. Oh my gosh, I wasn't talking to you like that. No, go to your supervisors. And my biggest piece of advice, have a paper trail. And this sounds horrible. This makes it sound like EMS is such like this awful job, and it's not. But everyone knows that EMS does have a very toxic work environment, okay? But having a paper trail, having physical evidence like this happened this time, this is exactly what happened on this day, and I reported it to this person, that paper trail really is going to help you down the line. And I am very, very happy to say that this woman does not work at that service anymore because of the paper trail that was created behind her. So that, I guess, is the healthiest way that I coped with it. And my biggest piece of advice, have a paper trail, write everything down, and report it to supervisors when it happens. Don't wait few weeks to say something, because at that point, is it relevant? Probably not in their eyes. Have a paper trail, report it as soon as you can, go to your supervisors. And if you don't feel comfortable going to your supervisors, that sounds like a whole nother problem in itself. You have to have somebody that is above you that you feel comfortable going to, whether it's a lieutenant, a captain, battalion chief, anybody. You have to have someone you feel comfortable going to. And if you don't feel completely comfortable going to them, like, hey, it's a really touchy subject, bring a trusted coworker with you to the reporting. Be like, hey, they're literally just here for my support because I'm very uncomfortable talking about this. Having the courage to actually tell a supervisor when something's going awry or when there's a problem with a coworker, it's a very scary thing. I've had to do it on several occasions, and it didn't get easier by any means, because I think the thought that goes through everyone's heads is, oh, I'm going to be the problem child. I'm going to be the tattletale. I'm going to be that coworker that nobody wants to work with because she just keeps reporting people. She keeps running to the boss for every single problem. Kind of like that kid in school that's just like always running to the teacher, being a tattletale. That's how you feel. That feeling never goes away whether you're an adult or not. But the matter of the fact is, if that person is actively going after you, going after your job and your reputation as an EMS provider, that's a problem. Even if you're the crappiest EMT or you're not the best at your job, like you still don't want that reputation. Okay? That is what I was concerned about. I know I'm a good paramedic, but this woman is going around telling people that I am actively trying to kill people by giving them ketamine. That's what started this whole debacle, right? So my biggest piece of advice and how I coped with this woman and this just absolute, she's probably the biggest leech out of this entire list. I reported it and I had a paper trail. I felt comfortable going to my supervisors. Even when I just felt uncomfortable talking about the situation, I had supervisors that I was comfortable going to, and it is now handled. Now she is no longer a leech in my life because I don't allow her to be. It is handled. Go to your supervisors and have a paper trail. The last and final leeches that I want to talk about are the sadly salty veterans of this career. All right. So I have been partners with this certain leech. And I hate calling him a leech. I'm going to call him like a Sour Patch Kid. When he is nice, he is so nice. The last and final leeches that I'm going to talk about are those salty AF. Say it with me. AF people that, oh my goodness, just find a new job. Seriously, find a new job. That is the best piece of advice I have for them. The salty leeches that come to work every day miserable. They don't want to be there anymore. They hate EMS. EMS is clearly not the job for them anymore. And they're just showing up because they're obligated to. They don't want to go out and find a new job. They've been doing this job for so long that at this point, it's nature for them to just be angry about being there every single day. There's a couple of these at my job. Now, I love my current service. Hands down, the best EMS agency I've worked for so far. But every EMS agency is going to have those bad apples. That's not a secret. And what's really sad is these people are sometimes great people. The two people that I can think of on the top of my head at my service that I call leeches are actually great people. Outside of calls, fantastic. We'll cook dinner together. We'll sit there and talk about life. These two people are actually two of the main people that ask about my boyfriend pretty often, knowing that he was away for the military. Very, very nice. But when it comes to the tones going off, that's when the business really starts, right? Those are the most vital moments. If they are my partners, I have to be able to realize and recognize, like, are they going to be helpful on a call? Most of the time, sadly, that answer is no. Even if it's the simple mundane calls like Meemaw fell, they're going to start bitching about it. It does not matter what call is going to drop when those tones go off. They're going to bitch. They're going to moan. They don't want to be there. They want to sit at that station and they want to do nothing all day long. And the reality is that is not EMS. EMS is 50-50. Some days their wishes are granted and we don't run a single call all day long. Other times, though, more often than not, that is not the case. And obviously, we run calls. We're a 911 service. That's why we're EMS providers, right? And it gets so draining. It makes you not want to go on those calls. You know what I'm saying? The last shift that I can think of when I had one of these leeches with me is we were having a quite busy day. But I'll be 100% honest with you. I was the one writing all the calls. I was the one actually, doing things. They were all ALS calls. I was the one writing the reports. I was the one doing the work. All they had to do was drive. And I'm not saying like that's all EMTs do. Just drive. They're ambulance drivers. No, that's not what I'm saying. I promise. But it was just the frustration of, dude, I'm the one doing the work. I'm the one writing the reports. You're literally driving back and forth to the hospital. Is it annoying that we have not seen the station in 4 to 5 hours? Absolutely. I would love to be sitting at the counter or sitting in the recliner right now. But that's the reality of our job. We're running calls. We're running 911 calls. If you don't like the job, get out of the job. It made it so draining to be responding to these calls, no matter what the call was. I was feeding off of their energy. If they would start bitching and moaning about a call, I'd start getting angry that we were going on a call. And that's not how it should be. That's not how it should be whatsoever. And that was the frustrating thing about being partners with these people. Another thing that really, 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 really drove me nuts. And I will admit, I started picking up on this as well. The best example I can think of is when we go to an urgent care. Urgent care calls us. It sounds stupid in the notes. Like, for example, perfect thing. I actually want to make a TikTok about this because it was wild, okay? We got called for leg pain to an urgent care. Leg pain. That is all it said in the notes. And I'll be honest with you. This guy starts bitching that we're going to the urgent care for leg pain. I start bitching we're going to the urgent care for leg pain. That's not right. That's not right at all. It's not how the energy should be in the ambulance. Yes, it does sound stupid. Let me just tell you something. This lady had a DVT. Her leg was mottled, cold, everything. Again, I want to make a TikTok about it because it's actually a really, really cool call. But it was just the energy that this guy was giving off. I was feeding into it. It was starting to affect me, sucking the life out of my enthusiasm. He was being a leech. And it was very frustrating. It was not the attitude that I wanted to portray. Because guess what? When we got on scene and I was like, oh my God, this is actually serious, immediately I turned it around. But you know that whole pre-gaming thing? Like, EMS 2020, they really harp on it. Like, always pregame before you get to your call. My pregame was just surrounded by negativity. That when we got on scene, I was like, holy crap, this is serious. Like, I had to completely flip my mindset. In the first place, my mindset should not have been negative anyway. But because my partner was so negative about, we're going to an urgent care for leg pain. Yeah, I fed off of that. I'll admit it. All right. Those are the people that drive me absolutely bonkers. They make your shifts so long. We're there for 24 hours. I'm with you for 10 to 12 days out of the month. Those 10 to 12 days start feeling like they are dragging. When I had my last shift of the month, I was praising. I was celebrating. And it sucks. I don't want that. I want to enjoy my partners. Building a bond with your partners is so vital. Because like I said, you're there for 24 hours. You're there for 10 days out of the month. You see these people more than your actual family, your significant others, or friends. So when you're constantly around someone that brings just the atmosphere in the whole room down because they're angry, they're grumpy, they don't want to be there, it's going to reflect off of everybody. And it sucks. It sucks so much. They are sucking life out of you as an EMS provider. Leeches. So how did I deal with him? All right. Several times I had to remind myself throughout the month why I actually like being there, why I am a paramedic. And no matter how he feels about the call, I'm going to feel a different way. That's how I ended up shifting my mindset. Instead of feeding off of his negative energy of, oh my gosh, I'm going to an urgent care for a leg pain. Instead of, okay, leg pain's the only thing they told us. What if it's something else? And it ended up being something else. Again, go follow my TikTok because I am going to make a video about it probably after I'm done filming this. Shifting my mindset of, I'm going to be there for a reason. We're running another call. Someone's calling 911 because they think they're having an emergency. Helped a lot. Actively avoiding his negative energy helped a lot. And it's a lot easier said than done. Like I said, I was with this dude for 10 days. The other guy that I'm thinking of, I was with him for a couple months at a time. It's hard shifting your mindset and it's like putting a wall between you and the ambulance. Like, he's driving, there's a wall, I'm over here, and I'm mentally pre-gaming for the call by myself, which I shouldn't have to do. I shouldn't have to do that whatsoever. It should be partner to partner because you guys are going to be working together on the call. But mentally pre-gaming myself to have a positive mindset was a lot harder than I thought, but it's what got me through the months. And honestly, just asking my partners. Like, some days people are just going to have bad days. And a lot of the time, you don't know what's going on at home for them. One of my partners, the one time I did end up asking him, like, hey, dude, like, are you good? Like, you have been grumpy since the moment you walked in. Most of the time, you're at least in a good mood until we start running calls. Like, is something going on? You don't have to tell me everything, but I am concerned. You and I are partners. We have to work together for the next 24 hours. I need to know if something's going on. I need to know so I can adjust myself and that I can just kind of leave you be, or I can help you. Sometimes being very transparent and open with them and like confronting it head on just like that, maybe you'll be, oh yeah, dude, like, my family member's sick. My mom is in the hospital. My grades are suffering right now. I'm having a really hard time at home. Like, maybe sometimes opening up and then having a new perspective for them of like, okay, maybe this is why they're so grumpy, makes you have an open mind about them as well. Now, sometimes there's going to be nothing wrong. They're straight up, that's just their attitude. They're grumpy. They are a bad freaking apple. And when there's nothing wrong, that makes it even worse. My best piece of advice on how to cope and handle these salty little leeches, which is really ironic because isn't salt what kills leeches? Like, you put the salt ring, or is that slugs? It's slugs. Never mind. How to deal with these salty leeches is either confronting it head on, because you guys are partners. You guys have to build that bond. You guys have to be able to work together to give the best patient care possible. Confront it head on. Be like, hey, are you doing good? I care about you. What's going on? Or shifting your mindset. Try not to feed off of them. Remember, you are there for a reason, to give patient care. Focus on the patient. Don't focus on his mindset. Don't focus on their attitudes, how they feel towards the call. Ignore their road rage. Ignore their rage in general towards going to the call, and focus on you. Mentally pregame yourself of, I'm going to walk into this call with the open mind of what's going on, more than just what the call card says. No matter what he is saying about the call, I'm going to have one mindset and one mindset only for this call, and that is to be open about what's going on. You know what? For not having a script, I feel like this episode did not go that bad. Pretty proud of myself. I ain't going to lie. So, what are some of the leeches that you have dealt with in this career? Leave your comments down below, whether it's YouTube or Spotify. You can leave comments for both of them. I could sit here for probably another hour. This is already going to be a long episode. I've been recording for 52 minutes. But I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you walk away with some advice on how to deal with these leeches. Because like I said, EMS is a toxic work environment and it sucks. But bringing up the discussion of these people in the career that are making lives absolutely miserable, whether it's patients or partners, it makes it aware. It brings it to the table and it makes it a topic of conversation. And maybe this won't be an ugly topic. Maybe one day it'll be a positive topic of, hey, this is how EMS used to be and look where it is now. But none of that will happen unless we start talking about it. And that's exactly what my podcast is about. The good, the bad, and the ugly of EMS. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell so you're notified every time I post on YouTube or Spotify. That is all for this episode, and have a good shift.